system, everyone's a victim. Doesn't matter if you're black or white, it hates you all. Here inside the system, violence is a symptom. Fighting for what's right, but somehow everyone is wrong.
Boom! Now it should be working. I hope so.
Boom.
All right, so we're doing English today, my friend, and I just need to ask you, what do you want to be called in this episode? Alfrida, it says here. What do you want to be called?
Oh, yeah, I'm using her account on the Zoom.
Yeah,
So on this one, I mean, Luda works.
Luda.
Yeah.
All right.
Or linguistic misfit.
Linguistic misfit, storyteller, language exceptional. Today we have our friend Luda. Yeah, that's amazing. So we were talking and we thought that in order to expose the deep state to a wider audience, and we do have a benefit that we are Swedish and we do live in Sweden, and Sweden is more or less showing now is like it's all the information is coming out, and we can see that Sweden is kind of the center of the deep state. So we want to share the information that we have in being Swedish people, share it to the American and the English speaking parts of the world. So we have a lot of stuff happening right now, isn't it true, Luda, in Sweden and the Americans, the military, and
So very true, my friend. We have the DCA agreement, and
yeah,
I'm here on Gotland now, the island that is on the Baltic Sea. And you have a lot of military, and the next week is going to be when all the politicians and the private banks and all these people come to the island. So it's a lot of things starts to brewing. But when it comes to the DCA, what do you know about it, man? What do you want to be called, man? This is the first time we speak.
yeah, true.
So we also tasting each other a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can call me Magnus. I do like to go by M. In English, just say M.
Mm.
Yeah, well, the good question. The DCA, Defense Cooperation Agreement between American and the Swedish governments. The Americans basically have been given 17 military bases in Sweden, and this is kind of a part of a larger game where we see NATO on one side and we see Russia, maybe even BRICS on the other side, and we see how the both sides are increasing their weapon arsenals and whatever they are, up on their toes for the Third World War now, and that is why the Americans are here. But I have a suspicion. I don't know what you think, Luda. I think they could be here for more reasons than just Russia in Sweden. I think they have other agendas in Sweden. What do you think?
Yeah, and what we both know is when it comes to what happened there at the 2019 with Ericsson, for example, that how many proof that have been shown during the years that the American military have been here for quite a long time. So this agreement is on the surface, but it's so much going on underneath. So with this, from my perspective, it is to show the Swedish people more and more that now they are actually here, even though they have been here for quite some time. But for the majority, showing that now we are here. Also showing the irony of democracy, that it doesn't matter what the people say, whether we want to go join NATO or disagreement, like what the people have to say, they don't give a shit. That is also, I think there are many perspectives to it.
Yeah, I agree with you. We just had in Sweden, for people who does not live in Sweden, you might watch this from overseas or whatever. Sweden is not so democratic yet, like you might think. We have been discussing entering NATO for at least 10 years now, at least, but probably longer. We were not so interested in politics 10 years ago. Uh, but anyway, we were never asked, even though 10 years ago it was obvious we were going to have a voting for entering NATO. But the way our politicians played it out, they basically just entered without asking the people at all. And the majority of people in Sweden does not want to be involved in any conflicts. So we would probably not have entered NATO. So the politicians, they just went straight through and signed the deal. But now we have a voting in our government today, and that is to uh, the DCA, the Defense Cooperation Agreement, have been signed um, by the governments, but we need to have a vote as well in order to settle it. I don't know exactly. So you can see that once in a while, the government, if it suits them, they'll have a voting, like we did for EU just a couple of days ago. But when they really need to get something through and they can't afford to ask the people, they will not ask the people. They don't really care then, you know?
And that is the beauty, because what happened, like, why was the EU at that specific day? What happened that day also in the geopolitical sphere? The
You
petrodollar and the oil.
It was on the same day, was it?
Yeah,
Beautiful.
wasn't it on the same? Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that no, that was it 12th of, it was the 12th, and the EU was the 9th, right?
All right, so it was just a few days,
Okay,
but
so
it's
but
almost the same
yeah,
time.
okay. Yeah, sometimes I'm wrong. I admit I'm wrong, but yeah, tell us about that, Magnus, because that is shit significant.
Yeah. It's a pretty big deal. As we all know, the petrodollar has been the petrodollar has been since 74, I think, around 71 to 74 with the OPEC crisis. And what they did is that they instituted a credit created out of debt instead of having gold as a base to give value to the currency. And yeah, that has been a leading instrument for American influence around the world, economic influence. So when they don't renew the contract, that's going to have huge implications geopolitically around the world. It's going to be it's big things, you know.
That Saudi Arabia does not continue that agreement, that they sell the oil within the petrodollar.
Yeah, yeah, because
And
it
this is something that many Swedes have no fucking clue yet about when you speak about BRICS. That many people's like, what? What?
yeah, they don't even realize that about 97 countries around the world have joined hands in a institution or organization called BRICS. And
And what is BRICS?
well, initially it was 5 countries that went together around 2002 or 4 or something. That's when they start building it. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So those countries went together, and they are pretty huge. And already when there were those five
Pretty
countries,
huge.
when there were 5 countries, they were pretty much half of the world's population. Now they are 97 countries. I mean, so
And what is it, like 80% of the BNP? Something like that.
bro, you're probably right. I have no idea,
Uh,
but
uh, uh,
a lot,
Shitloads.
shitloads. And
Significant.
you know, and then we also have sanctions coming from the West sanctioning the BRICS countries, but in particular Russia. And I mean, if you look at what just happened in the stock exchange in Russia, they the sanctions were hitting so hard that they chose to not use dollar and euro no more. They stopped trading in that. They are putting instead of, since Saudi Arabia didn't renew the agreement. Russia is now using yuan instead of dollar as their reserve currency. I don't know what to say. And Swedish people have not even realized what BRICS is.
And this shows how democratic our country actually is. We are so well informed that we know everything. But if you do not know yet anything of BRICS, which is it is, then that should say it all. And I want to just come in with this line that is very important and that says a lot. And it comes to storytelling, because a lot of what we're going through is a form of a movie in this, let's say, education of starting to open our eyes to how things have been. And it's very much like a movie. And when it comes to storytelling, you can say like this, that storytelling breaks down into two words, and it is emotional investment. And the more emotionally invested you are within a story or a narrative, automatically the less critical you are. So if you as a Swede believe in the Swedish narrative that Sweden is a humanitarian superpower, you also become less critical towards all the crazy bullshit that this country and the company structure have done in the history and in the now. What you can start to see when you really start criticizing, asking questions, is like, holy shit, how many fucked up things that is going on within this country, all from like medicating the kids at a very early age, saying that you're sick, instead of questioning the system and itself. And like, also, where was the first central bank in the world? Where does that originate from?
Yep, yep. Do you want me to answer?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, be looking at it, looks like you're coming from Sweden. The oldest still operative central bank is in Sweden. Ladies and gentlemen, it is nowhere else but in Sweden. Boom.
1668. And then what is it, around 30 years later, 1698, we have the Bank of England
Yep.
kicking in.
Yep.
And all of that structure, the economic structure, leads up to, and now BRICS. So the whole order of the world, the West, the East, there is the significance of the times that we live in now is massive.
Yep. Yeah, it's huge. It's fucking huge. And
But
tectonic stuff happening now. And like you say, so the West, because if you look at where the banks started and how they spread, they kind of were exported from the Nordic countries to Europe and then eventually around the world. And the last couple of places in the world where they didn't maybe want central banks controlled by the Western hegemony, they fought back. And the last, decades, the deep state have been using the American army to go into these countries and create terror, create tension, destabilization in order to start taking out the natural resources from these countries, but also in order to put these countries, install a central bank, put them in debt, lend them money to rebuild their countries, lend them money to buy weapons, stuff like that. So we have been witnessing this system shift because the rest of the world are not interested anymore in staying in this Western hegemonic system. It's demonic. It really is. People are starving around the world and they have joined forces now and they simply don't want to play this game anymore.
because the mathematical equation to that old system is that less and less people get richer and richer, while more and more people getting poor. And that is the just mathematics, pure mathematics, that a lot of bright minds have known for a long time. But these interests, the power they had, the grip, have been so strong that, like, what, you cannot have done anything about it. But now we get a lot of proof that shit is happening.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff is happening, because otherwise we would not know so much of it. It can't be like that we can sit and discuss these things that was 20 years ago impossible.
Yes. And that is
Yeah.
also, kind of telling. People are asking, is there a force fighting back against the deep state at the moment? And well, you need to make your decision yourself on the information that you take in, but we wouldn't be able to sit here and discuss the deep state today, without.
Not a chance, not a chance. And there is so much we can speak of, and we have to take bit by bit. But the Swedish history is, holy shit, there is a lot to talk about.
Oh my God. And everything
Wow.
was hidden in school. We are finding out now.
Yeah. And this is also why we speak in English, to create that bridge of an understanding that we are Swedes actually fighting back, standing up, trying to get our voice heard. Because like the picture of Sweden by time and in the near future is not gonna look good.
Yeah.
So it is important that we do what we're doing, speaking from suppression to expression. Speak, because in Sweden, the psychosocial engineering that is so firmly gripped is to shut your mouth, do not speak, and be quiet.
Yeah.
And that is so embedded, indoctrinated, that even though I speak, I might even be wrong, but express yourself. It's very, very important. And
Yeah.
the conflict and the friction that you and I might not agree on everything, but that is fine.
Yeah.
We need to speak. Yeah.
I agree with you. And, bouncing ideas with others is a great way to see how they bounce back. You're able to determine, you get extra information about your own thinking. You need feedback. We
Yeah.
can't just be silent and sit and reflect and reflect and reflect. The best way is to actually put out your ideas into the world to other people and see how they react. By doing that, you can rearrange over time. And I was gonna say something good I thought had value, but I forgot it. But it was basically about yeah, the story that they are building, right? I mean, if you've been looking at following the geopolitical situation, the death of the dollar for a couple of years, you have seen a narrative. You have seen Donald Trump coming in 2016 and fighting off the deep state. They're like lizards when he's debating the 17 on stage, and Donald Trump just goes straight through them. They try to stop him every single turn of his candidacy. And if you just stayed awake and followed the news, you would actually know what happened during the election, the voting fraud, and all of it. So when you look back, you can connect the dots. You can see the road we have traveled, and you can see that there is a story, that there is something being told here. When we try to tell people who have not been fortunate to follow the story, how it develops, they are starting from scratch. So they need to trust the process. They need to actually get involved, start opening their voices, and eventually they start to see the connecting dots as well. What do you think?
Yeah, it's the cognitive dissonance that appears when, because as I said with the emotional investment, when you are very emotionally invested to a narrative, when you break that narrative, it hurts. It is it always depends, and it is individual, but it's not the easiest process. and it can feel almost like you're dying at moments. It's like, holy shit, everything that I thought was not. And I built my whole perception of who I am and what I think life is on this narrative. And now that is crumbling. And that is a very difficult emotion. But when you understand that it is natural, it is. Have you seen The Prince of Egypt?
Disney or what?
Yeah, yeah.
I
Just
think so.
as a metaphor that he grows up thinking that he is something, and then reality starts to hit him, and
Yeah.
he starts to understand that everything that he ever thought was not, and where he actually come from, it's dark and it's abusive, and he does not longer believe in what they believe. So then he shoots out in the desert, in the vacuum. He's like, who the fuck am I? Who am I? Where am I?
Yeah.
And then something new comes in, and that is because we are individuals and we all have a story, and that to break narratives is a painful process. And this is also why we speaking, because I have went through it, and I think you have went through it, the dark times of seeing things more for what they actually are is not easy. But as showing that now today, I have went through it, I'm on the other side, and I live in more inspiration, purpose, and grounding because of it. So that's also important, because a lot of people that I've talking to, they lose hope. And it's part of the change curve of understanding, breaking old narratives. It's just that in school, the indoctrination, we have not been taught how to deal with difficult emotions. It's just prefrontal cortex, data, 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 nothing in the limbic system, nothing in the instincts, the tribunal brain, how we work as a whole. So, of course, it becomes a difficult process, but we all go through it.
Yeah,
And
man.
that is also important to point out. How have it been for you, man, when you started questioning? Have you had it with you for a long time, or how did that happen for you?
Yeah, I mean it's long process, and I think I was kind of born like free-minded, and I was kind of like outside the box, and I do believe we all are born like that. I would think it's hard to, be stuck inside the box unless you've gone through indoctrination, and that started when I was 6, 7. And I remember that I just never fitted in school, man. It was just impossible. But I just sat there listening to the teachers. I was bored, and over a long time, I mean, around 20, you kind of inside the box. Then you're thinking about jobs, you're thinking about starting to pay taxes and all of this, and you kind of just wander on in life. And then eventually, you're like 30, you're like, what the fuck happened? But we got 10 more minutes for this meeting. But yeah, and what happened was that over time I started to learn about society and the governments and the corruption, and every single time it just opened my views, but it is painful as well. You definitely feel scared, you feel lonely, you feel everything. But I always felt that once I accepted it and moved on, it was better. I felt more freer. I felt less weight, less burden once I accepted it and moved on. I started to feel
Mm.
lighter and better and cleaner and everything. So I think it was, and it is still an ongoing process to shed the layers of lies we have put on in society. How did it go for you, bro?
If I go for a quickie, we all have our own roads to it, but I was as you, school was not made for me. And then early on, I had like past trauma from family dynamics and stuff. So I got into drugs very early and into the criminal mind and being more of a pirate. And then I faced a lot of consequences because of that type of life. And I ended up in the pharmaceutical industry. I was the perfect object of getting a lot of diagnosis, a lot of medication. So once I was actually going on 10 medications times a day, and I was from the doctor mindset and that doctrination, you are fucked for life, you're brain damaged pretty much. But that
Wow.
also opened up that people came my way, helped me, and now I've been off medicine for over 3 years, and I've been fighting the pharmaceutical industry because I've seen it for what it is, and I learned a lot about the history, like who was the guys who invented these diagnoses, who earns on this, and what is a diagnose from start with all the chemicals and all the stress that we as humans live through. It is not that strange that it creates symptoms.
Yeah.
So before I understood a bigger picture of, the geopolitical sphere and all, I was trying on my own front to just like, fuck you, big pharma. And then the whole corona thing happened, and I'm like, holy shit, okay, now things are happening. And then I got more into it, also like getting more and more knowledge in a wider spectrum, getting into monetary mechanics and other areas to build it up with the history. I was very focused on only big pharma, like the pharmaceutical industry, but then when I connected it with the bigger picture, everything, the history with the like the East Indian companies until today, all of that.
Yeah.
So we all have very different journeys, but all roads leads to the Iron Throne in the end.
They do. All
That's
roads
it.
lead to Rome.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, yeah.
we will try. I was thinking that we were going to do two plays, two Zoom meetings, but I think we will do one. We have about 6 minutes left, so we can put this out on the internet, send it to the Americans, and see if they understand what we are talking about, if they understand our Swenglish. I
See
hope
how it
so.
hits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But so we also had a bit more about the DCA Defense Cooperation Agreement. What do you think is going to happen today? Do you think it will go through?
yeah.
Yeah. You think they'll vote yes?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. Because otherwise, it would. Then I don't know. But that is what I think, that it will go through, and that will just show more of what is, that it just gonna the development and the evolution of everything will just become even more clear. And I'm very curious how Almedalsveckan is gonna show up.
Yeah, you mentioned it. The
That
politicians
is,
will be coming next week and have political discussions on Gotland, the island.
yeah, yeah. And
Oh.
what will happen during that? We bought the DCA. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it probably goes through. I think it will be yes. I think if it's not, if they vote no, I think it is reflexive control of the narrative. If that was the case, that they voted no, but I think either way, the deep state would love to have a vote no in order to say, oh, look, we are being occupied here. The Americans are occupying our territory or something. But I don't think we're in a position to do that because of Russia. So we do need to have the
Mm.
Americans here. So it's a beautiful play. It's like somebody's been playing 5D chess in order to do this. So yeah, if they vote no, I just don't think we have a choice, because the American bases are already here. They probably already built the equipment is here. They wouldn't move all of their equipment to Sweden unless they were certain they were going to stay. It costs a lot of money to
Mm.
do these transports.
And what is, from for you, for someone listening, what is the deep state from your perspective? What does that mean?
Yes, basically it is a decreasing group of people becoming more and more rich on uh, by benefiting from the majority of people. They control corporations, and through these corporations, they are hiding behind judicial persons. They are like AB, like aktiebolags, like stock companies. They're hiding behind them, and they are hiding behind the political scene, hiding behind the judicial system in Sweden, and they are using technology like telecommunication, um, the creation of energy, and control these very huge industries around the world. So they've been preying on the rest of the world. It's like we talked about the Western hegemony, the colonial system. It has just been improved and developed over the last centuries into the deep state, and we do have Swedish players at the top. Wallenberg family, they are very powerful players, and they, I'm sure, control most of uh, the people around the world inside the deep state through blackmail.
Yeah, because you have the also something that more and more people start to see is the importance of having the control over telecommunication structure and what that actually means, and also the energy. And there we have the big companies, Ericsson and ABB, which have very interesting histories. And that maybe we get into that in another section, depending on where
Yeah,
we go with this. But there is a lot to talk about. So to when we speak about different, it is good to keep it to like, okay, this is one section and then speaking about that. But it's when you speak about one thing, it connects to everything else. So
yeah.
yeah,
I think we have
definitely.
about 30 seconds left or something.
All right,
But
man.
I think for the next episode would be great to talk about the telecommunication and how they play a huge role in the larger picture. It's very central to understand that.
Definite.
All right. Well,
Boom, man.
pleasure talking
Nice
to you,
speaking
bro.
to you, man. Yeah, the same. Boom.
Boom shakalaka. Take care, bro.